This is a Volvo 5-cylinder, a broken one at that. These engines have a few names, but you probably know it as the white block. It's called the white block because it's mostly aluminum. It's an aluminum block sandcasted with iron sleeves. But apparently it looks white. That's why it's called the white block. I don't know. This engine, it came in a ton of different flavors, but the recipe is generally the same for all of them, 2.3, 2.4, 2.5. It even came in 6-cylinder variants, 4 cylinders. Anyway, again, aluminum with iron sleeves. If you've searched for a cracked block on Google, you've definitely stumbled upon shimming the block, sleeving, 2.4 liter swaps, whatever. There's a lot of information out there, both good and bad, but a lot of it's misleading, and that's what I'm here for. I decided to really deep dive the cracked block, the cracked sleeve issue on the white block specifically. And this actually probably applies to most open deck engines. I'm not sure if a lot of other engines have this problem. I haven't researched that far, but I'm guessing they probably do, because this is not like a bespoke design to Volvos. So this engine here, it's a 2.5 liter 5-cylinder. It's the B5254T4, as Volvo calls it. It's one of the other names. That's why I said there's multiple. But the idea is the same for all open deck engines. So what happened on my V70R? Well, this thing has 210,000 miles on it. And up until the last 5,000 miles, it was completely unmodified and was not broken. The crack was not there. It wasn't until I tuned the car for more boost that we cracked the cylinder liner. At about 100 miles an hour on the front straight at Grattan Raceway here in Michigan, I sprayed down the track from coolant. Pipe blew up, one of the hoses exploded, and I was in front of a brand new GT3 RS, completely coated the entire thing. The guy was actually pretty nice about it. It was blue coolant on his white car. So sorry to that guy. I'm sure he won't see this. Yeah, so anyway, at that moment, I actually didn't realize that the cylinder liner had cracked. I just kind of thought it was one of the hoses that failed because, you know, it's a 20-year-old car. The things tend to start to get dry rotted. The reality, though, was the cooling system had become pressurized, and this pressure was because a crack had formed in one of the cylinder liners, and combustion gases were going from the cylinder into the cooling system. And, you know, turbo boost, 20 psi of extra pressure in there was enough to split one of the hoses. So I continued to drive the car after this. Actually, I fixed it and continued to drive it, and I only really had low coolant occasionally. It would misfire later on in its life. You know, after the 6 months was up, it was starting to misfire pretty bad. But the car generally ran okay for the most part. When I'd get into boost, the coolant level would drop because the hoses were swelling. That's kind of how I knew the thing was cracked, and then I borescoped it, which I can show you a picture of. And that was when I knew for sure the thing had a cracked block. And anyway, it was my daily, so I kept driving the thing, you know. And you probably could keep driving the thing for a year, 2 years, whatever, without really having any issues, as long as you're cool with continuing to fill it up with coolant and maybe do oil changes more often. I had a parts car, right? I had a spare engine. I knew this was kind of coming. So now I have 2 engines, one with a crack and one without a crack. However, the other engine, the cylinder head, which was my fault, is bad. So I'm actually going to combine the 2 engines at some point. And you'll see that in a future video. That's not what we're talking about today, but I'm going to combine the 2 engines and make a good one from both. But why did it crack? That's what we're here to understand. So the Volvo white block is an open deck design. What that means is the cylinder liners don't have full support around the top of the bore. Cylinder pressure is actually pushing the liner apart. It's literally stretching it, if you will, radially. And there's no actual support for the liner, just the clamping force from the cylinder head. This isn't unique to the white block. All open deck engines function the same way. With an open deck design, you'll actually get some relative movement between the head and the liners. You know, tiny, tiny amounts of movement. This is obviously not good, but this isn't why the cylinder liner is cracked. But keep this in mind for later. In the 2.5 liter, the cylinder wall is super thin at the relief cut. This is obviously where the cracks form. It is the thinnest part of the entire cylinder itself. So I noticed some abnormal wear on the top of the iron liner, and a gap was forming on between the iron and the aluminum. If we look under a microscope at the iron liner, we can see some strange pitting or wear, or whatever you want to call it, on almost every single one of these liners, only where the wall thickness is small. We can also see in the head gasket itself an area that definitely appears to have some wear or witness marks, or even polishing, if you want to call it that. And this is from the relative movement of the head and the actual cylinder walls themselves, because again, open deck. In my case, I believe, and probably a lot of other cases, what happened is over time, the micro movement of the cylinder liner relative to the head gasket wore away enough material from the iron liner to allow cylinder pressure to get over the iron and start to press on the aluminum. This sounds far-fetched, but honestly, you'll see when these next pictures what I'm talking about. There's actually two observable points that show this. One is a visible gap between the iron and the aluminum in several of the cylinders, not just one, several of them. And the other is how the relief cut measures between the other cylinder liners. This is a 32 thou thick feeler gauge. Goes right in on the edges. It's actually a little loose. You can see the gap there. Same thing on this side. It's a little tighter on this side. Yeah, I mean, you can see it goes in here, goes in here, here, all pretty easily. This side is a little different. Actually does look like the gap on the far side. Oh, there you go. Falls right in. Okay. But in the middle, it's super, super tight. So here's the issue. If I use a feeler gauge that fits based on the edges, then it's going to push the center out. The reason that this is happening is because, like we've been talking about, the aluminum has expanded in this direction. So what we're probably going to need to do is fit it based on this centerpiece, because if I force this 32 thou feeler gauge here, we're going to get bore distortion in this direction. So we'll have to think about that a little bit. So obviously this isn't good. It's actually most bad. This means in a lot of higher mileage engines, even if you just remove the cylinder head to shim the block, you may have head gasket sealing issues because of the wear on the top of the cylinder liner. I would highly recommend, if you have the cylinder head off, you're going to want to have either use one of those flat stones or just pull the engine and have the thing decked. You're going to probably have some sealing issues with the head gasket. Maybe there's some ways around that, but at least what I'm seeing on both of my engines, you're probably going to have some issues. The reality, though, is a stock high mileage engine may never crack a block. My case, for example, the car was completely stock until 210,000 miles. I had the car tuned, and one track day is all it took to crack this block. An increase in boost. Boost means higher cylinder pressure and possibly even combustion knock, and more heat, which we haven't even talked about. By far, the cheapest option to fix this issue is shimming. Shimming is actually applying a piece of metal between the cylinder liners at the relief cut. And I mean, by applying, forcing. You hammer that bitch in there. You use feeler gauges, which are made of tool steel, or even seen people like Ben at Rolling Motors use brass, which personally I prefer. Brass is softer, so it's less likely to damage the block on install, and it also has a very similar thermal expansion to aluminum, whereas aluminum's thermal expansion is double that of tool steel. So that kind of gives you some weird stuff, but the shim creates a nearly solid wall between the cylinder liners, which will reduce vibrations and improve the energy transfer and reduce stress as a result. And the energy transfer will go through the rest of the cylinder liners, which is a good thing. That's what you want. We should look at it, some FEA, finite element analysis. This is some engineering shit. So I modeled up just two cylinders, and they're the N2 where mine failed and where a lot of other people's engines failed. It's generally not the middle one. It's usually the outside 2 or 4. The model isn't actually that ideal because of the height of the combustion chamber. It's pretty tall. I actually should have made it way, way smaller, but it's going to be fine. The stresses and strain plots will just be a little bit lower than in reality. But we can interpret the results the same and just assume it's going to be a little higher in the cylinder liner. So I modeled this thing up, right? I applied 300 psi of pressure in the cylinder, in one of them, not both at the same time. So the 300 psi might sound high, but the reality is that combustion pressures can exceed this number significantly. But this is brief. The stress plot that we can see here, though, highlights the shims transferring energy through one liner into the next, whereas the unshimmed block has a large stress riser right at the relief cut. And overall, the reduction is like 26% stress reduction with shims, which is a lot. So strain, though, is another helpful way to look at in body, and this is the relative movement of the body. It's the change in length over the original length and is a result of stress. The shimmed block has 35% less strain. And what's even more interesting is the cylinder liner now appears to be stretching radially pretty equally, which is what we want. Whereas before there was a concentration right at the relief cut. Any amount of movement to the head is not good, but we really can't do anything about that with significant changes to the engine. So reducing as much as we can is ideal, and a 36 or 35% reduction in strain is huge. I did a thermal expansion study with the shims, and I found no evidence of significant impacts to deformation. The aluminum and therefore the steel or brass shims will stay very close to coolant temperature and therefore have very little thermal expansion. While this method does strengthen the walls and basically eliminate the potential for cracking, there is an issue that I found that I haven't seen discussed anywhere. People do mention it in their videos, but there isn't much discussion about it, so let's get into that. I mentioned before the aluminum is deforming behind the iron sleeves, which means the gap is not consistent throughout and therefore has deformed. I did a quick study on the roundness of the cylinder before and after I installed an 035 shim, a 35 thou thick shim, and I did not like what I was seeing. After completely cleaning the gaps, and installing the 035 shim, the cylinder deformed by 0.003 of an inch, and this is on an end cylinder. An end cylinder, if you do it in the center or on 2 cylinders, you're getting 6 thou overall of ovality. So what I suggest doing is measuring the bore 90 degrees from the shim at the relief cut and at the relief cut before and after, and install the shims and tailor the thickness so that you get no deformation. In my case, this means an 32 thou thick shim, and you will not have any problems. Ovality in a cylinder is not ideal. This will cause piston damage because, again, the tolerance between the piston and the cylinder wall is very small, and it could cause piston ring damage over time, or just bad sealing generally, blow by. So don't do that. For the replacement engine, the plan is to freshen everything up, the bearings, the rings, the clearances, and we're going to shim the thing. I haven't decided the material. Like I said, I'd prefer brass, but I'm having a hard time getting a hold of these parts. And in the long run, reality is I don't think it makes a big difference. The process is fairly straightforward. Clean the gaps as well as you can. Find the right size shim like I just described to you. And, reduce the bore distortion as much as you possibly can. You'd get some feeler gauges. Those will work just fine for you. And work your way up until you're comfortable. And like I said, measuring the bore is important. And what you're going to do for that is you're going to get yourself some T-handle bore gauges and some cheap micrometers from Amazon. The $30 ones are going to work just fine. You're not looking for a precise measurement. You're looking for a repeatable measurement. So if you're able to, it's all relative. So you use your measurements to compare to your measurements. Doesn't matter what the overall measurement actually is, if that made sense. But listen, I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. You do what you're comfortable with. I just wanted to make you well informed. And if you appreciated it, go ahead and throw me a like. If you didn't, tell me what you didn't like so I can do a better job next time. But, I do appreciate you listening if you've made it this far, and really good luck with your engine build, and I'll talk to you next time.
Peace.